What's up guys, Hokibird here, and today I'd like to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while, and that's Halo 4. Let's just get this out of the way right now. I don't like Halo 4, and most of you know it. Now, as I've seen from the comments in my Halo 4 walkthroughs, many people seem to love Halo 4 and think that my contempt towards it is completely unjustified, but I can assure you I have my reasons, and today I'd like to explain them. Now, from what I've seen, most people out there dislike Halo 4 just as much as I do, but for the multiplayer, not the campaign. We've all seen plenty of videos demonstrating why the Halo 4 multiplayer is so hated, so I'm not going to be touching on that at all. I'm here today to talk about the campaign, and quite frankly, I think that Halo 4's campaign is just as garbage as its multiplayer, if not worse. And yet, I see all of these comments saying things like, sure, multiplayer was terrible, but the campaign was fantastic, I wouldn't change a thing about it. Some even go as far as to call it the best Halo campaign of the saga. I'll be honest, hearing comments calling Halo 4 the best campaign of the saga makes me cry on the inside a little bit, because it means you have never experienced Halo at its absolute best like I've been doing for the past 10 or so years. Now, I usually attribute this to having never played the Halo game before, or never playing the game on Legendary, and or never replaying the game once you've completed the campaign. If you are one of those people that played the campaign through one time on normal, or even one time on Legendary, thought it was fantastic, and then never touched it again, I'm sorry, but you don't get to have an opinion on this matter, not until you've logged at least 1,000 hours on each of the campaigns like I have. Now, this won't cover everything that I dislike about the game, just the things that I think that 343 Industries got completely wrong that negatively impact gameplay, so you won't hear anything about flat characters, terrible writing, crap music and sound design, or nonsensical story. In addition to that, these will only be the things that 343 could have easily fixed with some minor tweaks, so you won't hear anything about unnecessary QuickTime events or the insanely short weapon despawn timers either. So, let's start with weapon design. First up, we have the plasma pistol. Now, in order to understand just what is wrong with the plasma pistol in Halo 4, we have to take a look back at how it has changed over the years. Starting with the Halo Combat Evolved plasma pistol, we can see that the weapon consumes 1% of its battery for every 5 shots. In other words, a fully charged plasma pistol can fire a maximum of 500 shots if you never use the overcharged EMP shot. In Halo 2, the plasma pistol was largely unchanged, except that now it could be dual-wielded. Halo 3 introduced the first nerf that the plasma pistol ever saw, in that holding the overcharged EMP shot slowly drains the battery. Halo Reach actually buffed the plasma pistol from its Halo 3 status, making its standard uncharged shots do more damage to shields than ever before. Halo 4, however, decided to nerf the hell out of the plasma pistol by making it consume 10 times as much ammo than ever before. Instead of consuming 1% of its battery for every 5 shots, the Halo 4 plasma pistol consumes 2% of its battery for every single shot. In addition to that, the overcharged shot now consumes 20% of the battery every time you use it, and holding down the overcharged shot drains the battery very quickly. The result is that using the uncharged shot on the plasma pistol is a tactic that you'll never use despite its effectiveness, because it consumes far more ammo than just using the EMP shot. What's even worse than that is this same ammo consumption model also applies to the Storm Rifle, which doesn't have an alternate mode of fire anyway, effectively making both weapons undesirable. And notice my word choice there, undesirable, not unusable. Sure, you can use either one effectively, but you'll only be able to kill maybe 2 or 3 enemies before the battery is completely depleted, so why would you choose them in the first place? In addition to how the plasma pistol performs when you use it, how it behaves when enemies use it is almost more infuriating with how they can hold the overcharged shot infinitely. Now, allow me to explain this one. Going back to Halo Combat Evolved, Jackal Majors, those are the ones with the orange shields, have always been able to do this, and it really wasn't a problem, just a minor annoyance at its worst. So what's changed? Well, in Halo 4, this ability is not limited to only Jackal Majors. Pretty much all enemies that carry the plasma pistol can and will do this, including all those hundreds of thousands of grunts that you'll come across. What's worse is that the homing ability on the plasma pistol is so extreme in Halo 4 that the resulting EMP shot is nearly undodgeable. And even worse than that is the fact that enemies won't just sometimes do this as a tactical option. Now, in Halo 4, enemies will do this the instant they see you, especially on Legendary. The combination of how many enemies can use the plasma pistol's overcharged EMP shot, how often they choose to do so, and the fact that they can hold it infinitely until you're within range results in gameplay that absolutely crawls. You have to be so cautious and pick off all those plasma pistol wielding bastards from range that absolutely kills the gameplay. What pisses me off most about this is that 343 could have easily caught and fixed this issue if the game had been thoroughly play-tested on Legendary. All you would have to do is limit the enemies that could use the overcharged shot to Jackal Majors and Grunt Ultras, similar to Reach. Revert back to the old ammo system of 1% battery for every 2 shots, and make it less likely for enemies to choose to use the overcharged shot, and make the battery drain less quickly when the overcharged shot is being held by the player. Everything else could have stayed the same, including the uncharged shot damage, which is just as good as it was in Reach. Now the next weapon I want to touch on is the Needler, mostly because it's the only other small arms weapon that the Covenant uses. For this one, I actually have no problems with how it performs when you use it, other than its absolutely pitiful ammo capacity. But considering its absolutely insane amount of power this time around, this is somewhat justified. Now, my problem with the Needler comes from how it is used against you. Like the plasma pistol, its tracking ability is way too extreme. There is essentially no way of dodging the needles when you're going up against one other than staying behind cover. You basically have to consider them to be about as dangerous as a Jackal marksman. They won't kill you instantly, but if you ignore them or otherwise don't take them out quickly, you will find yourself exploding. The result is that you find yourself very carefully and very methodically taking out any enemies wielding Needlers. Now this isn't a problem in and of itself, but it becomes incredibly tiring when applied to a weapon as common as the Needler. Now combine this with the fact that you also have to be incredibly cautious when facing overcharged plasma pistols, and you have a problem. The plasma pistol and Needler are 2 out of only 3 small arms weapons that the Covenant uses, and they're the most common of the 3. And the result is that you have to be super insanely methodical in all Covenant encounters that it just sucks all fun and enjoyment right out of the game. It also severely limits your options when it comes to combat, but I'll talk more about that later. The next topic I want to cover is Promethean weapons, but before I can do that, I need to talk about an incredibly important base game mechanic, and that is melee, or more specifically, the effects of melee being used against you. Again, in order to fully understand what is so wrong with this mechanic in Halo 4, we need to take a look back at the previous games. In Combat Evolved, you can withstand a melee attack and keep right on fighting. Your shields will be severely depleted to the point of needing to be more cautious than before, but for the most part you can just keep going. Halo 3 melee works much the same way in that you can get hit and your shields will be severely depleted, but you can keep fighting. Now, going back to Halo 2, melee kills you instantly, and this is a problem. It nearly kills all possibilities of fighting at close quarters, except for one very key aspect in Halo 2. The Elite's melee attacks are very easily dodged, and then you can circle around them and instantly assassinate them with a melee of your own. Now look at melee in Halo 4. Instant kill, completely undodgeable, and the result is that there are no options for close quarters combat in Halo 4 unless you're using a scatter shot. Reach was much the same way, and this is one of the few major issues that I have with the Halo Reach campaign. Combat Evolved, Halo 3, and Halo 3 ODST had the best melee mechanics, and it shouldn't be considered a coincidence that these 3 games rank highest on my list of favorite Halo campaigns. Keeping the previously mentioned melee mechanics in mind, now let's take a look at the Promethean weapons, starting with the Bolt Shot. This weapon is broken as all hell in multiplayer, but in the campaign it's basically useless. Its role is that of a Promethean pistol in that it is headshot capable with a moderately small clip size and a decently fast reload. It also has a secondary fire mode by holding down the trigger, making it into a pocket shotgun. The alternate fire mode is what is so broken about it in multiplayer because it blows people away in one shot, but in campaign it is completely and utterly useless. Sure, being headshot capable and all means that you could use it effectively against crawlers or even against grunts, but the weapon is completely outstripped by the superior light rifle. So why would you ever choose to use a bolt shot? In theory, to save ammo for the light rifle or to strip Knight's shields using that overcharged shotgun shot similar to the plasma pistol. But in reality, this overcharged shot is completely useless because it won't get the job done in one shot. Hell, it won't even get the job done in 2 shots. And then after that second shot, you have to reload the weapon. Not to mention that you have to be at point blank range when you fire those 2 shots, which gets you killed by a single melee attack. Trying to use the standard shot of the bolt shot from slightly further away than suicidal range is just as pointless because the accuracy of the weapon is utter shit. Hell, it's so bad that even on Legendary the enemies can barely hit you with it when they use it against you, so trying to use it to whittle down Knight's shields is not an option. So ultimately, what use does it have? The answer, none. There is no reason to ever carry a bolt shot throughout the entire campaign, because its only effective range is within the range that just gets you killed by melee. Moving on to the suppressor, we have the same problem. Shit accuracy and shit range. Now, on the one hand, this makes sense because the weapon is meant to be the Promethean SMG, meaning that it should only really be useful in close quarters scenarios. But close quarters combat in Halo 4 just gets you killed by a single melee attack. You can use a scatter shot at close range because it gets the job done so quickly, but the same cannot be said for the suppressor. It will take an entire clip of suppressor ammo to take down a Knight's shield, but unless the shield is already partially depleted, you'll be dead long before that ever happens. Trying to use the weapon from range is also not an option, even if you fire in bursts, due to the previously mentioned shit accuracy and range. Just like the bolt shot, the accuracy of the weapon is so terrible that even on Legendary, even the enemies can barely ever hit you with it. This essentially makes crawlers, excluding crawler snipes, a non-threat unless they get in your face and overwhelm you, and it makes Knights that wield suppressors a total joke. And here we run into the opposite problem of what we had with the Covenant weapons. 2 out of only 4 of the Promethean non-power weapons found in the entire game are completely worthless. And once again, like the Plasma Pistol and Needler, these are the 2 most common weapons of the 4. That about covers my problems with the weapons in Halo 4, so now let's move on to the enemies themselves. Starting off with the Grunts, well, actually, Grunts are the same as they've always been, and I really don't have any problems with them. I have a problem with their weapons and the cheapness of being able to carry the EMP shot infinitely, but the enemies themselves are just fine. Same with Jackals. No. I wish the melee attack wasn't so spastic. Close. Those guys. What on earth went so terribly wrong with Knights in the development process that we have some of the most bullshit, bullet-spongy enemies that we've ever seen in a Halo game? Well, 2 things actually, and when I say 2 things, I mean only 2 things, and that's what is so frustrating about Halo 4. Because if these 2 things had been noticed and fixed, the game would be leagues better than it is. Anyway, those 2 things are their shield recharge mechanics and their ability to teleport. Okay, let's clear some things up right off the bat here. When your shield goes down, you have to not take any damage for a certain amount of time before it will start to recharge. This amount of time that you have to wait for your shield to start recharging is called the recharge delay. For the player, that time is 6 seconds in Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 4 and 5 seconds in Halo 2 and 3. After your shields start recharging, the amount of time it takes for them to reach full capacity is called the recharge time. Interestingly enough, in Halo Combat Evolved, this variable is affected by difficulty, and your shields recharge really slowly on easy, but recharge in about 2 seconds on Legendary. From Halo 2 and onwards, this variable is not affected by difficulty, which makes me think it was a mistake in Halo Combat Evolved in the first place. Enemy shields, however, have a different recharge delay and time than the player. In the case of Halo Combat Evolved, this recharge delay, noted as stun time here, is actually an entire 12 seconds. Now, as a side note, Masters and I tested this, and we can say with confidence that for elites in Halo Combat Evolved, this stun time of 12 seconds is the same regardless of elite rank or game difficulty. The recharge time, however, is a different value, and here we can see that it has a base value of 10 seconds. This variable is affected by difficulty, so we have to look over here at the global multipliers to see that it is twice as fast on Legendary, leaving us with a 12-second recharge delay and a 5-second recharge time. Now look at Halo 2. These two variables differ amongst the different ranks of elites, but the blue minors have a stun time of 15 seconds and the red majors have a stun time of 10 seconds. Again, Masters and I tested this and can say very confidently that these two values are the same across all difficulties. The recharge time, however, is 6 seconds for the blue minors and 4 seconds for the red majors, but is affected by difficulty, so we can see that the global multiplier for Elite's shield recharge time in Halo 2 is 0.3, making the shield recharge times 1.8 seconds and 1.2 seconds respectively. Now, for Halo 3, the Brute's power armor doesn't recharge at all once it's depleted, so we can skip right to Halo 4, where we can see that the recharge delay on Elite's shields is 3 seconds, and the recharge time is 3.5 seconds regardless of difficulty. That's insanely fast compared to previous games, but it's not something I can't deal with. Knight's shields have the exact same values of a 3-second delay and 3.5-second recharge time. This short amount of time that it takes for a Knight to completely regain its shield wouldn't be too bad if it wasn't combined with their ability to teleport. That's right, Knights will literally disappear into thin air when their shield starts to get too depleted and will reappear somewhere else, usually behind cover where you can't shoot them. There is absolutely nothing you can do to stop a Knight from teleporting once it has decided to do so, and there is no way to track or to predict their movements in order to know where they will reappear. So you have to waste precious seconds looking for where the Knight has disappeared to, which is usually long enough to allow the Knight's shields to fully recharge. What pisses me off so much about these two mechanics is that I could have dealt with either problem individually. If Knights had the ability to teleport but had a 10-second shield recharge delay like Elites do in Combat Evolved, I could deal with that. Or I could deal with an insanely fast shield recharge delay in time so long as Knights weren't allowed to fucking disappear into thin air whenever they wanted to. But no. Both mechanics are in the game, and how they complement each other so well is absolutely infuriating. All it does is artificially prolong fights and force you to expend more ammo than you should have had to. In the same way that the extreme tracking abilities on the Plasma Pistol and Needler suck all the fun out of Covenant encounters, Knight's shield mechanics and their ability to teleport sucks all the fun out of Promethean encounters. The general tactic, if you can even call it that you usually end up resorting to when facing Knights is to spam shots from the light rifle from a distance until they finally disintegrate. There's no thinking, no challenge, and no fun, and it causes Knights to act like big bullet sponges instead of intelligently designed enemies. Watchers are much the same way. They have a recharging energy shield just like the Knights. Now in the case of Watchers, it takes 4 shots to crack their shield and a 5th shot to kill them. That doesn't sound so bad until you realize that there is absolutely no strategy that can be used against them to conserve ammo or kill them more efficiently. You either expend 5 shots from the light rifle, 5 shots from the DMR, 5 shots from the pistol, or a single shot from a sniper weapon. The worst part about this is that you don't even have to aim anywhere special on the Watcher. They have a headshot, but it's covered by their shield. Once that shield is cracked, their base health is so low that shooting them anywhere kills them in one shot, so there's no point in aiming for the head anyway. which, I might add, is so small you may not even realize it's there. Now, this method of spamming shots to take down Watchers wouldn't be so bad on its own. You spend the 5 shots that it takes to take them down and then focus on the Knights. But the problem is the only strategy you can use to take down the Knights is also spamming shots from precision weapons. This becomes mind-numbingly boring very quickly. The next thing I want to talk about is weapon availability, or rather the utter lack of it. This really only applies to the missions Forerunner, Shutdown, and Midnight because those are the missions where you're mostly fighting Prometheans. Let's take a look at the entire weapon sandbox of Halo 4 for a second. We have, for the UNSC, the Assault Rifle, Pistol, Battle Rifle, DMR, Sniper Rifle, Shotgun, Rocket Launcher, Railgun, Spartan Laser, SAW, Sticky Detonator, and Frag Grenade. For the Covenant, we have the Plasma Pistol, Storm Rifle, Needler, Carbine, Beam Rifle, Energy Sword, Concussion Rifle, Fuel Rod Gun, Gravity Hammer, and Plasma Grenade. For the Prometheans, we have the Bolt Shot, Suppressor, Light Rifle, Scatter Shot, Binary Rifle, Incineration Cannon, and Pulse Grenade. Holy crap, that certainly seems like a lot of weapons, but hang on, let's remove all of the power weapons from this list, and now what are we left with? For the UNSC, we have the Assault Rifle, Pistol, Battle Rifle, DMR, and Frag Grenade. For the Covenant, we have the Plasma Pistol, Storm Rifle, Needler, Carbine, and Plasma Grenade. For the Prometheans, we have the Bolt Shot, Suppressor, Light Rifle, Scatter Shot, and Pulse Grenade. Significantly fewer options. Okay, now let's say we're going up against a standard Knight with a light rifle. Now what are our usable options? The Assault Rifle, Pistol, Battle Rifle, DMR, Plasma Pistol, Storm Rifle, Needler, Plasma Grenade, Carbine, Light Rifle, Scatter Shot, or Pulse Grenade. But hang on, because of the way the mission is designed, the only weapons we have available are these: Bolt Shot, Suppressor, Light Rifle, Scatter Shot, and Pulse Grenades. Yeah, nothing but Promethean weapons. And now if we narrow down this list to our usable options, we're left with the Light Rifle, Scatter Shot, and Pulse Grenade. This is a problem. Sure, you can argue that there are plenty of cases in the game where you have other weapons available to you, like binary rifles, sniper rifles, and incineration cannons, but you can't deny that there are many places in the game where the above 3 weapons plus the bolt shot and suppressor are your only available weapons. I get it. 343 wanted to make sure that we used their weapons at some point rather than completely sticking to what we were familiar with from Bungie's games. So they made UNSC and Covenant weapons run out of ammo so quickly, and then made Promethean weapons the only options for replacing them. But then they made 2 out of those 5 common choices completely useless because they're only effective at point-blank range, which just gets you killed with a single undodgeable melee attack. I read a comment on my Forerunner walkthrough video a while back that summed up exactly why Halo 4 has so little appeal to me, and I'd like to take a moment to read that comment for you. In fact, I've invited the original poster of this comment here to read it in his own voice. I want everyone to listen up and listen good, because this is the best explanation I've ever read of what went so disastrously wrong with Halo 4's campaign.
I'll give you my primary reason for disliking Halo 4's campaign, and it's a reason I don't see others presenting very often. Halo 4 took the strategy element away from its predecessor Halo games, leaving us with a run-of-the-mill first-person shooter. The Bungie Halo games, particularly Halo 3 and ODST, less so with Reach and Halo 2, were more than FPS games, they were strategy games, and that's what set their gameplay apart and made them incredible games. Playing them on Legendary is a frustrating experience if the player doesn't think, if the player doesn't strategize. Being accurate, quick on the trigger, and quick to take cover, typical FPS strategy, is not enough. The player must use the right weapon combos, must use their allies, and must approach certain encounters in a particular, not always obvious manner in order to succeed. What Bungie did so well was, point number 1, to usually ensure that a viable strategy existed to overcome difficult encounters. To be fair, this was usually the case, but not always. Take Hoki's favorite Halo 3 mission, Savo Highway, for example. A player who doesn't employ good strategy on that mission is going to have a grueling time, especially at the roundabout and the broken path. But by keeping the Marines alive and arming them effectively, the player can succeed and have a lot of fun doing so. It's not an obvious strategy, and that's a good thing, because it tests a player and forces them to think things through and makes it rewarding to finally think your way to victory. The great thing about Legendary difficulty is that bad strategies are almost always severely punished, so it doesn't take long for a player to realize they need to try a different approach. The other thing Bungie did well, especially in Halo 3 and ODST, was, point number 2, give the player options such that there wasn't always a single effective strategy. And that makes it even more fun because the player doesn't have to find a single prescribed method for playing, such as the Elite Brute combo. The player is free to mix it up or play to their strengths. Halo 3 and ODST brutes can be dealt with using the Plasma Pistol plus Headshot combo, but it's far from the only option. Precision marksmanship is effective. Assault Rifle / ODST SMG / Plasma Rifle plus a Headshot combo is effective. Getting in their face with a shotgun, melee, or brute shot can be effective, though slightly more risky. The Needler is effective. Power weapons are, of course, effective. Arming your Marines is effective. Grenades are effective. The combination of point number 1 and point number 2, that is what makes for an amazing game and sets Halo apart from other FPS games. Now we arrive at Halo 4, and let's look at point number 1 and number 2 from above. There is very little strategy in Halo 4 in the sense that the player must think their way through difficult encounters. Nowhere is this more true than combat with Knights. Knights are cheap, and using good strategy doesn't ensure victory, which makes Halo 4's campaign so frustrating. A player can use a good strategy and think their way through combat with a Knight, but the Knight can teleport away or kill you with an undodgeable melee. That's just cheap bullshit. Deaths should be due to bad strategy, bad skills, or occasional bad luck. Deaths for no good reason are no fun, because there is no reliability to it. It's like 343 is just saying, too bad, fuck you, try again. Bad strategy is punished, but good strategy is not reliably rewarded, and sometimes it's punished as well. Halo 4 fails on point number 1. On to point number 2. On the surface, it appears that the player has a plethora of options because 343 added so many weapons, but due to poor design, many weapons are essentially useless or run out of ammo so quickly that they can only be used occasionally, AR, Plasma Pistol, and Needler especially. Well over half of the game involves fighting Knights with Promethean weapons, and despite the many apparent options, the player only really has the light rifle, the scattershot, and occasional power weapons. As Hoki has explained, the scattershot works, but it's risky. Its ammo is sometimes limited, and you can't approach Knights who also wield a scattershot. So aside from the occasional time the player has a binary rifle or incineration cannon, spamming the light rifle is all you have. And even then, the Knights can cheaply teleport away or melee charge you. So even using the last-ditch strategy of spamming the light rifle doesn't always ensure success. No options equals no thinking equals no strategizing equals no fun. Halo 4 fails on point number 2. The strategy element was perfected in Halo 3. It was near perfect in ODST and Halo 2 on heroic difficulty. It was there but not as well developed in Halo Combat Evolved and Reach. But in Halo 4 it doesn't exist, and that's why I dislike Halo 4's campaign.
Colorado Camper, take a bow, cause you nailed it. No need to strategize and no options to be able to do so. In Covenant encounters, you have to move so slowly and methodically, picking off every enemy from a distance unless you get EMP'd by a plasma pistol, filled full of needles, or simply killed by a single melee attack from an elite. In Promethean encounters, unless you have a power weapon, your only options to take down Knights and Watchers is by spamming the light rifle or getting in close with the scattershot, the latter of which isn't even an option when going up against an opposing scattershot. And that one remaining option of just spamming the light rifle until they disintegrate is sometimes unreliable, not to mention boring and monotonous as fuck. Someone once asked me, if you hate Halo 4's campaign so much, what would you have done to fix it, and what does 343 Industries need to do in Halo 5's campaign to bring Halo back to Halo 3 levels of awesomeness? If you've been paying attention, I think the answer to this question is obvious. Number 1. I'd improve the range, accuracy, and possibly the damage on the bolt shot and suppressor in order to make them usable options. I'd also create some kind of Promethean assault rifle that could effectively strip Knight's shields at longer range, but wasn't headshot capable. Number 2. I'd revert melee damage back to its Halo 3 and Combat Evolved levels where you can take one hit but not two in order to make close quarters combat more possible. That will at least help with Colorado Camper's second point of giving you more options in combat. Number 3. I'd change Watchers such that it still took 5 shots to kill them, but only if you never hit the head. Instead, it would take 2 shots to crack the shield, and after that, they would be vulnerable to a headshot. Knights could be fixed easily by making their shielding system more similar to the Elite's shield system in Combat Evolved, where it takes 10 seconds for their shields to start recharging, and 10 more seconds for the shields to fully recharge if they were depleted. I would also make it such that you would be able to tell where they went when they teleport, either on your motion tracker or with other visual clues. Also, if they do teleport, it causes their shield recharge delay to be extended by 5 seconds. The Plasma Pistol could be fixed just by reverting it back to its Halo Reach status, and the Needler could be fixed by nerfing its tracking ability. Jackal Snipers would go back to their Halo 3 status of killing you in one shot, and Hunters would have a less spastic and more easily dodgeable melee attack, even though they would still kill you instantly if they managed to land a blow. Now, unfortunately, this is all just fantasizing. Halo 4 is a done deal, it cannot be changed, it cannot be fixed. But with these changes in place, I think you would have a pretty fun Halo game. Now, you'd still have the problems of the ridiculous direction the story is taking, and the usually bad or at best mediocre audio design, both in terms of sound effects and music, but fixing those would require overhauling the game rather than just tweaking some numbers. At this point, I hope you at least understand my distaste with Halo 4 even if you don't agree with it. Hopefully this will at least somewhat lessen the amount of negative comments that I get that either accuse me of hating on the game for no reason or that try to defend Halo 4 or 343 Industries. At this point, I think this is going to wrap things up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, although I imagine many of you didn't, but regardless of whether you enjoyed it or not, I hope you at least learned something about Halo 4 that you didn't know before. I want to take this opportunity to thank Colorado Camper for his comment on my Forerunner Legendary walkthrough video, and for agreeing to read it out loud for this video. Until next time, I'm HokeyBird, and I'm out. See you later, guys.
I'm seeing a control facility at the top of the tower. We need to be there yesterday.